Self-driving cars could make transportation safer, more convenient, and better for the environment. We speak to a CEO deploying autonomous vehicle solutions worldwide. Meet Edwin Olson of May Mobility.
Olson is the co-founder and CEO of May Mobility. The company launched its first fully driverless service in December of 2023 in Sun City, Arizona, a retirement community. Olson says autonomous vehicles, or AVs, play a big part in reimagining the future of our cities.
So many people who drive to work today, and I don't think it's because they like commuting. I think that it's just the least bad option that they have. And so the challenge is we want to outcompete personal car ownership. We need to make a product that's better than taking your personally owned car downtown and parking it and having it clog up the streets. And this is where a really convenient, accessible, on-demand system can change people's behaviors. And at first it starts off with, hey, I got some work to do. It's going to be more convenient for me to work in a May Mobility vehicle today than to drive myself in. After a few months of that, they might decide, we don't really need that second car. You might have families moving from 2-car households to 1-car households. And the kids growing up in those environments are becoming less and less attached to the idea of personal car ownership. So the changes that we're talking about here are not things that are going to happen next year. These are generational changes. We have to physically reconstruct what our cities look like. But the exciting part is that we're at this point where we can start that transformation.
Safety around driverless cars remains the biggest concern among riders. 63% of American adults say they would not want to ride in a driverless car, according to a 2021 survey by the Pew Research Center.
One of the things that I thought was really fascinating is you have an autonomous vehicle and it's heading down the road and the ball comes skipping out in front. And normally if we're driving the car, we see the little boy running we swerve to avoid hitting the kid. But this guy was talking about, but when you swerve, you could hit another car and kill 6 people. And so the decision is, do you kill the one little child? This is stuff I don't really think about, but they were talking about this and some of the stuff that you actually have to think about when it comes to autonomous vehicles. Can you walk us through that? And I never thought, there's an ethical piece to all of this and the thinking through all of this. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so the way that we build our technology actually sidesteps a lot of this. So the way that our technology works is that we have not one driving stack on our vehicle, we have about 16 miniature autonomous driving systems on every car. And as the car is driving around, these are competing for control over the vehicle. So every few hundred milliseconds, we run a tournament where these literally are competing for who's got the best option, the safest action at every moment in time. So we don't have our engineers sitting in the back room deciding, well, if I have to choose between a dog or a senior citizen, let's aim for the dog. Nobody's doing that because that's fraught with these ethical problems that you're talking about. We really believe in giving the car options and letting it imagine what the likely outcomes are and picking the best outcome at that moment based on all the information it has.
What are your fears when you have a company like this? Because it seems like you have to kind of let go. You're talking about these systems and the systems in your mind are going to work, but still you have to have kind of like maybe a sleepless night here or there. Can you talk to us about that?
We started our first safety driver free deployments. So our cars usually have safety drivers up until now, but here you are with a customer in an empty metal box. And the way our technology works is that we don't tell the vehicle what to do in every situation. So to a certain degree, we don't know what's going to happen next. Now, we do have a lot of statistical data that the vehicle makes good decisions. And we have a formal safety case where we've worked through all the things that could go wrong to make sure that we're exercising due care. But at the end of the day, that first passenger gets in the car and goes for a ride and there's no safety driver, yes, your heart's beating a little bit faster and you're hoping that everything goes well. Now the good news, it was great. And it's the beginning of a new era for May that now we are starting to operate these rides, more and more of them without a safety driver. Unit economics improve dramatically in this case. But Yes, exactly right. We take the safety really seriously.
In the United States, transportation makes up 28% of total greenhouse gas emissions, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. But autonomous vehicles have the potential to cut emissions. The technology leads to more energy-efficient driving with less sudden braking.
You're a forward-looking guy, but there's a lot of people who are past-looking. You know, they would rather be stuck here. Change, a lot of people are like, hold on just a minute. What are some of the problems that you face when you've got the wall kind of aspect? Like, wait, we're not ready for this.
You know, I think what we have in common is that most of us look at the way that we live in cities today, and there are lots of problems. There's a huge problem with transportation in terms of accessibility, equitability, pollution, congestion. It's not safe to ride your bicycle in most downtown corridors because people drive like maniacs. And cities try to provide good, equitable transit, but it's really hard. Some cities have public transit, like subway systems, which are great. But for most of the United States and Canada, public transit is spelled with buses, and most of those buses are driving around empty almost all of the time. And this is a huge amount of capital going into operating these buses that are just not providing great service. So our vision is, can we make public transit great? Can we make public transit so good that people who would otherwise take their personally owned vehicles downtown would say, nah, I'm going to take public transit instead. And what that would allow us to do is to physically change the way that we build our cities, the way that we allocate space, and would make the cities more beautiful. And so with the people who kind of hold their hands out and say, no, I don't know about this, all we have to do is to point out what cities could be, what it could be like to live in a city that is pedestrian friendly, where everyone gets where they want to go on time.
So which market did you start with first? And talk to us about some of the challenges you faced, and what were things you learned there that helped you move forward?
I think the big breakthrough for us was approaching the business to government sales model. So this is one, instead of, well, our product looks and feels like an Uber, right? You pull out an app, you request a ride. So to the rider, it feels like you're getting an Uber ride. But what's totally different is who's paying for the ride. Well, the epiphany for us was selling to cities, integrating with their public transit. Because it turns out those buses that are operating and driving around empty all the time are really expensive. So there's a huge amount of revenue opportunity if you can provide a better option than those empty buses. And that has really unlocked the growth for May. We're able to go and work with cities and let them upgrade their public transit within the price budget that they already have.
Getting the cities on board, that's one thing. Getting a passenger to step foot on this bus, as you said, this box, and there's nobody there at the wheel, that's a leap too. How hard is it to get people to do it, and then how long does it take them to get comfortable with it?
It turns out it's easy to get them in the vehicle if you do something very critical. So if you are solving a real problem that the user has, then they want the solution. So for example, we oftentimes target buses that are underperforming. And so the people who use those buses are used to standing outside. Maybe it's raining, maybe it's cold, maybe it's just miserable. And they're hoping that the next bus shows up on time. They're cold, they're miserable, they're impatient. If you drive up to that rider with a comfortable, warm vehicle that's ready to take them directly to their destination, basically everybody in the world will get in the car because you're solving a pain point that they actually have. That's really been our recipe for driving adoption. Make sure that we're going where riders need us and where we can really help solve problems.
In 2022, fully driverless taxis began operating in Chongqing and Wuhan, China. The vehicles, operated by Baidu, were tested for nearly a decade before their deployment.
Where are some places where you're like, hey, they're doing it right, and other places that need to kind of pick up and start moving in the right direction?
One of the biggest problems that we hear about overseas is aging population. And there just aren't enough drivers to operate buses to get older folks to the doctor's office, to the grocery store, to the community center. And this has a huge negative impact on quality of life for people. And the solution is to provide flexible, easy transit. And when there's no drivers available, your alternative is an autonomous driver. So this is a huge, huge opportunity for us to build a great business, especially in Japan, in China, but also to increase people's quality of life. So it's a place where we can do good and do well at the same time.
When you talk about the evolution of transportation, you know, horse and buggy, and then you've got a car, we've got trains, and then it goes to planes, and now you're part of this evolution. Walk us through what you see the future looking like. I mean, are we going to see people with like, why do you need a garage? I mean, are we not going to have cars there? I mean, how do you expand it out for us? I mean, what's your vision? What do you see?
I think we're going to see really multimodal ways of getting around and getting work done. If you are going to the local home improvement store and you need to bring back a sheet of sheetrock, you're not going to rent an Uber, right? And where you have very high density links of people, like from an airport to between terminals at an airport, that's where a bus makes a huge amount of sense. But you need to have the right kinds of vehicles in the right kinds of places. Sometimes it's going to be subway, bus, smaller cars. And I think we're going to get really used to the idea that when we have a transportation problem to solve, we're going to be able to reach out and grab the solution that is best for us at that time. The one that is most convenient, has the best carbon footprint, and the one that's going to be safest for our communities.
One final question. We talked about going and talking to the government people and trying to get them to, and then getting that first one. And then you talked about the sleepless night perhaps as before, now the passengers there. And so as you kind of walk through all of this, what's been the most rewarding aspect of this for you on your own personal journey through this?
Well, for me personally, I'm a first-time CEO. I've been doing this for about 6 years. And so we've seen the company grow from 6 people that just took a jump. We had no investors when we started the company. So, 6 people, $0 in the bank, to today, a company of 300 people that is the only AV company that makes money by operating AVs. I think we've got the best go-to-market strategy. And it's not just me, right? This is not my work. This is the work of 300 people who have really invested themselves in this company.
300 today, where are you 5 years from now?
Not wildly bigger. So, I think we might someday be 1,000 people, but part of the way that we can be successful is to be very capital efficient. If you're spending a lot of money, that just makes it a lot harder to generate the cash that's going to let you do the next thing. So I very much want to stay lean and focused.
Ed, thanks so much.
Thank you.